Okay, everyone, I think we'll begin. We've got a few more people that will join us during the session, so you'll see them pop up along the side. If you're familiar with Teams, that won't phase you, but otherwise you'll see at the bottom there's thumbnails with initials on it. That's just everybody's in the Teams call this afternoon. Just to make you aware, I am recording this, so if you ask anything, you will be recorded, and then that recording will be shared after the event, so just to make you aware of that. We have quite a few people on the call, so while I'm presenting this afternoon, we'll make a space at the end of the presentation just for questions. So could you all make sure that your mic is muted? If I hover over the bar in the middle here, there's a mic button. So if you make sure that your mic is muted, I'll just do that now. And when your mic is muted, you have the line through it, and that means that we won't hear anything that's going on your end. But if you wish to speak, remember to unmute it as well. It's up to you whether you want to have your camera on or off. It's always nice to see the people you're presenting to, but that's a personal choice. I'll undo mine, so I'm not such a mystical person on the other end. You'll be able to see what I look like for those of you that I haven't met before. So without any further ado, we'll get started. On the sidebar, if you click the button I'm hovering over now here, there's an in Teams conversation and it will pop up down the side. You've got meeting chat. It shows you the people that are in the meeting, but you can also down the bottom here type questions in. So if you type in here, everyone in the team will be able to see it. So make sure it's something you're publicly happy for people to see, but pop them in there and we'll do our best to come back in and answer those at the bottom if I don't answer them as I'm progressing through the meeting. Okay, let's begin. So this afternoon is really part one of two. So on Thursday, we'll cover the learning aspect and how to use Teams for learning. Today, we're going to cover the functional aspects of setting up Teams. And it's going to be from the perspective of you at home as an individual, having to set up a team or setting up a learning environment as a teacher or someone who's involved with teaching and learning in a school, rather than the school setting this up as a whole. So it's slightly different from some of the previous sessions I've delivered for those people that are joining again. What we'll cover today is the first bullet point. So in Microsoft Teams, we'll look at creating accounts, then we'll have a look at creating teams and customizing those teams, and then we'll have a little look at how to start to use it for remote learning. But then mainly that comes into the second Thursday meeting where we'll look at OneNote Class Notebook, we'll look at assignments, and we'll have another further session in it, all contained in one go, and we'll have questions and answers after that. So we will pause midpoint today. The great thing about Teams is it's available on practically any device. In fact, you struggle to find a device that you won't run on, whether you work on desktop computer, whether you've got Chromebooks that you've lent out as a school for distance learning, where the school's shut, if you've got any type of tablet, mobile phones, and it works on virtually any web browser. For those people that are using Apple Macs, up until last week, Teams didn't work in Safari, but now that's been solved. And it is in what's called beta testing, but you can use it in the web browser. And probably in the web browser is the best way to use it. You can download an app as well if you wish to, and it prompts you to do that when you log in. But most people will go, no, I'll use the web app, which means it opens up as a tab in your web browser. When you're setting up users for Teams, you'll need to make sure that you've got staff set up, which most people do because they use Office 365 anyway in school for Outlook and emailing each other. But in a primary school, and it's less so in a secondary school, but in primary school, you haven't always got all of the users set up as far as pupils are concerned. So you might find yourself at the beginning of this having a piece of work to do. And I know certainly quite a few schools I've spoken to that are going to hold back the rollout of Teams fully until all the pupil users have been created. So if you've got a turn on consultant, we can help you with that. But I know some schools are wishing to do it on their own. When you go to create the pupil users, you must make sure that you've got some sort of naming convention to know who they are. So on the second bullet point there, you'll see that I normally name pupils as their year of leaving the school and their intended year of leaving the school. Obviously, you can't help if they're in-year leavers. It just makes it easier to track them. And when you look at them in Office 365, you'll know which group they belong to. Also, it's really important to say that you need to make sure that pupils don't get added to staff groups. So staff groups will have a more relaxed set of permissions. And when you come to set up pupil users, you'll make them a member of a group. You might decide, for instance, to have one group called pupils, and all pupils in your school are a member of the pupil group. Or you might have a group for each year group in the school, and then you add the appropriate pupils or students to that year group. Then once you get them into Teams, you'll need to look at the settings in Teams because there are additional settings in Teams. I'm just going to break out of the presentation and show you where that is a moment. Today it's fairly brief and high level, but you'll need what's called the administrator login for your school if you're going to set up the accounts. And you'll also need what's called here the admin center. When you open it up, it will land on a page like this. Here is where you create users. So you've got active users, and you can either make them individually or you can add them through multiple users, which you have to get a CSV export or a spreadsheet export from your MIS system like Sims or Integris. And down here are the groups, and then you have different groups in your school, and you need to make sure that you add the users to the appropriate group. So you can see down here, I've been doing an MIE class. So I've got a turn it on staff class. I've got a primary classroom and so forth. And then that will set the restrictions that are appropriate for the pupils, such as the obvious one for pupils are not being able to email outside of the school. So you might even want to lock it down so they can't email each other, or they could only email within a year group, or only email a particular teacher. But all those restrictions are normally driven by making them a member of a set group, which then they inherit those restrictions. So the setup of having users in the first place is quite critical, and the rest of using Teams is built upon that. If I move through to the next slide, when you come to make Teams, we're going to focus mainly on what's called class teams this afternoon. That's for using when you're teaching. But you've got three other types of teams. So PLCs tend to be more business orientated, often used in trusts or a group of federated schools where you need professionals communicating that are either leading trust or maybe in the admin side. So that's non-learning professionals. Staff and other are the main teams to use if you want to create a team to use between staff and a school. The values over staff is the fact that you've got what's called a staff notebook. So any of you that have used OneNote, it's just like having a pad of paper with a pencil, except it's inside your team or on your computer, and you can keep your notes there. You can organize them, but also other people can see them if you wish. For most schools, it's not going to be a problem with the amount of people that you want to add to a team. So as you can see, you can have up to 5,000 users. If you're starting to get beyond the 200 plus students for a large team, you can just assign them in different separate classes instead of adding them into the one class. The rest of the session is really best now explained through going through and explaining how to create a team, which we'll show you in real time. And also we're going to familiarize you with the layout of Teams. So particularly for those people that haven't used Teams before, I'll go through what the different buttons are, how they work, what their purpose is, and how you might then use them within your role in school. So as you can see, I've got Teams here opened up as a tab in my web browser. All I did from the launch at the beginning is I went across and clicked Teams. You've also got the app launcher over here, and this is where all of your apps are for Office 365, so you can click Teams in there as well. And then that's where you'll be prompted to either download and install the software if you haven't got it installed on your computer, or you'll open it up in the online version. I'm using here Microsoft Edge browser. It was re-released a few weeks ago. It was completely rebuilt. Microsoft Edge I wasn't a great fan of until then, but now I am the converted. It's really good, equally as good as Google Chrome. So if you haven't got it, you'll know if you've got it, because instead of having a blue E, you'll have this turquoise E down here, and it's much more reliable. It's built on what's called Chromium. When you arrive in your Microsoft Teams, you won't see Teams like this necessarily. If your school hasn't been using Teams to date, you'll see the screen that I had over here, and that will be something that looks a bit like this, where it says create the team or join a team. So you can invite pupils or staff members from a code to join a team, or you can then create them. So we'll go through how to create a team in just a bit, but we'll look at the window itself initially. Down the side, you've got what used to be called charms, but now they're called buttons. The activity button is really a constant stream of everything that's been going on inside your school's Teams. It's also a place to upload materials. You can find help, so that links out to Microsoft Help documents. But if you were a teacher that's been away for a bit, maybe you're covering your school on a rota and you're only in once a week, if you're lucky in that scenario, to look after the key worker children, you just want to dip in and see what's been going on. The activity centre here is a good place just to get a feel for what's been happening, who's been saying different things, who's shared documents and so forth. Chat is the next button on the side there. Chat is a one-to-one chat between you and other members of staff, or you and other pupils within your school tenancy. So your tenancy is your Office 365. What you say in here will be private. Nobody else can see it. But I'll show you somewhere else a little bit later where if you do engage in a chat, that chat will be communal and it will be shared. So, you know, if you want a one-to-one, you can go in here and have that. If you want to type something, you can type into this box here and it will then put it in. If you'd like a few more formatting options, click the button in the bottom left hand corner, and then you've got the normal sort of text formatting options you have. You can put indents, bullet points, you can add links, you can even add hidden in there. The Microsoft dots are a key thing to click on. You can add tables and so forth. And when you're ready, you just press send. So chat, for all intents and purposes, a bit like those social media platforms like WhatsApp. You can also have down the bottom, you can attach documents. You've got emojis if you want to get interactive with your colleagues. You've got GIFs if you want to send them a little gift to brighten their day. We're all in isolation, so sometimes sending them an Elmo might cheer them up. And you've got stickers too you can add in. So stickers I find quite useful when I'm talking one-to-one with pupils or students. Depending on the pupil or student, they may respond well to getting a sticker, whether it's a praise situation or maybe they've been trying really hard pastorally at home. And don't forget, even though we're not face-to-face and welcome them into the classroom each morning, you can still use the chat as a praise mechanism to speak with them. You can add calendar events. You can also link to videos as well through something called Microsoft Stream, which is where you host videos in Office 365. And that is today where I'm recording the video for this Teams demonstration. One thing I want to flag from a safeguarding perspective, we are all professionals, we've all been DPS checked, but if you are having a chat in here and maybe you've organized a one-to-one meeting with a pupil, make sure that that meeting is professional and you speak to them exactly the same manner that you discuss things in school. Also, just to make it clear, chat is submissible and can be checked under GDPR. So if someone makes a claim that you've said something you shouldn't, or if a discussion wasn't professional, or somebody says something inappropriate, the chat can be searched by your administrators and then extracted and used for other purposes. So make sure that if you're saying something in chat, it's as professional as it always would be in school. Next, we've got the Teams button on the side. Here we've got all our different teams, or you're in a particular team. We'll come back to how to create those teams in just a moment. Assignments we're going to leave till Thursday. So any of you that are joining me on Thursday, we'll look at how to use the assignments feature, how to set assignments in Teams, and also how to use that other the option there called OneNote Class Notebook. Calendar is your personal calendar, so it will display everything that's in your normal Office 365 Outlook calendar, and it will appear in here. If you create an event, I wouldn't create it in Teams. I'd create it in your Outlook calendar. So if I went back to where I came in, up here you've got Outlook email, and you've also normally got Outlook calendar. If you can't see it, go to more apps down the bottom, and then you will find calendar in there. So create a calendar event in the calendar itself, and it then just pushes it into Teams. You can create them in Teams, but it's better to push them out from calendar in its own event. So if you wanted to have a professional meeting, maybe you're using this with colleagues, maybe you're using this with students or pupils, you press the create meeting, give it a title. So I'm going to say Teams use. You can invite attendees along. So I've got a fictional set of attendees here. So I know that if I'm doing this with my teachers, I'm going to invite Deborah, and I'm also going to invite Patty Fernandez. As you can guess, it's American. So those two will both now receive the invite to my event, because I want to have, let's say they're both in the senior leadership team, and I want to have a discussion about how we're going to extend our pastoral outreach to make sure that pupils don't feel isolated when they're at home during this period. Don't want it to repeat because I just want to have the one meeting, but if you do want it to happen every day, maybe it's a morning briefing that you're going to have with staff, you can have it to repeat daily, weekly, monthly. The options are there. You can also tie it into a channel. So if you wanted it to occur within primary classroom, if you were using this feature instead of professionally, you might set it for teaching. So you can set up a daily lesson, and you set up the timetable for the day. You might have your maths and English in the morning, you might have something else in the morning, and you set them still as here as a meeting, but then you invite the pupils that are a member of the primary classroom or the secondary classroom. But for the purpose of this, I'm just going to make this a calendar meeting. I'm not going to add it to a channel. Location's almost irrelevant because we're all homeward bound unless you're having to go in and do your day's teaching. And then you put your agenda in here, or if you've got your agenda in another document, you could drop it in, and you simply press send. and the people that are invited will get that email and it will just come up. And as you can see, I clearly can't type here this afternoon either. The other great aspect of Teams is you can use it for calls. So you can use it for audio calls, such as we're having now, where I've got things muted, or you can use it for video calls. And not just video calls, you can have people that join your video call, and at the same time, you can share your desktops. At the moment, I'm sharing my desktop. If I jump back out of this team and I go across to the other team and I hover over here, this little icon in the middle where I've got a cross through the rectangle, that would stop me sharing my desktop, but it has an arrow pointing to the middle otherwise, and that allows you to share what's on your screen with your colleagues. So if you want to quickly send something over to them, Teams can do that for you as well. When you're setting up a meeting, if you've got your calendar meeting and you decide, okay, I've forgotten someone, because I know this is one of the questions that I had before. So if I join that meeting, it might ask you if you've never used it before, allow you to use your microphone and camera. If you want to use Teams effectively, you don't have a choice. And then in it will come, and it might ask you to allow things on the taskbar, on the address bar up here, and you could get that where the camera's got a red cross through it. Just allow that. So I'm going to continue without audio. If you want to add someone into the meeting, you can add them during the call. When you're in the call, up here in the top right-hand corner, it says join participants, and you get the same address book and you can add them in. It's because I'm trying to add a call within a call, it doesn't like it. So I'm just going to close that out and come back to here. So that's the overview of the bars down there. I'm now going to pop back over here to the teams, and we'll have a look at creating a new team. So if you want to create a new team and you've already got teams in there, it's up here at the top right hand corner. If not, you'll have the box I showed you before in the presentation where it says create new team, and here you'll have a box that says join a team using a code. So if you want to create a team, you click here and then you click create team. If you're going to use it for teaching, it's a class team. If you're going to use it for communicating with your colleagues, it's a staff team. You make the appropriate choice. I'm going to make a class one just as an example here. When you create your team names, you can't have teams with multiple names that are the same. So you need to be really clear. So if it is, maybe you've got a primary school and you're working on trees, so you might have oak class. Then description is, this is for all Oak class pupils. And then you go next, and it'll start to make that team in the background. Depending on how fast your broadband is at home, it will decide how long it takes for that little circle to go. Then you can add students in. So I've forgotten some of the students I've got here, but if you start typing the letter of their name, let's see if, okay, so there we are. I've got Robin Schneider, he's a student. And also then I've got Rosie as well. If it comes up like that and you can't find something, press the add button here, which shifts them down underneath. And then you should be able to search for them back up here at the top. So then I can go and get Rosie, and I can add Rosie in. As you're going to be doing this individually, that's the easiest way, is to add the pupils you know that have been created. If your pupils don't have an Office 365 account, they will not appear in your address book for possible students to add. The same goes for teachers. So you can make teachers a member of your class. If you're setting one up, you might say that in your school, you're going to have the rule that the phase leader or the pastoral year head, if you're in secondary, or the head teacher also wants to be in there. So I'm going to add Patty in there because she's my principal for America. And I press add. So now I've got Patty, who's also going to have an overview of my team. So in her activity center, she'll be able to see what's going on in my class. And here I've got my students, and then I press close, and it will just make the team. So then I've got Oak class created. If I went back to all my teams up in that corner, here are the ones that I made before, and here's Oak class. By default, down here, you have something called general channels. So this is the team. And then down below, you have channels, which are really subcategories. So you can think of, if this was a filing cabinet, the class is the filing cabinet. And then the channels are the individual files or the suspension folders that go inside the filing cabinet, and you can use them to divide up content. But I would strongly urge you just to stay with the general channel initially, particularly as well until you've had Thursday's webinar, because we'll go through adding channels versus other ways to break down your class. Once you're in there, you can manage your class by going to the three dots. Something in Microsoft that's really key is to explore whenever you see three dots, because very often there's things that are hidden. In here, you can manage your team. You can add more channels. That's what I mean about underneath where it says general, adding different subcategories. You can add a member to your team if you didn't add them initially and you thought, you know what, I added the head teacher, but I'd like to add the deputy head as well, or I'd like to add the subject leader, pop them in there. You can leave the team as an adult, but if you were creating this for a pupil or a student and you enroll them in a class team, they can't leave. That option is ghosted. So you've got them in there, and there's not an option just to duck out and say, I'm not going to take part in that team any longer. Edit team allows you to choose things like graphics. Get link to the team is where you can send links out to people. So you can email those out, or you can share them directly out of Office 365. And I'm going to have a look at manage team more than anything else, because that's the first thing you need to do. When you go to manage team, you'll notice you've got various tabs up here. So here are the people that I've got that are owners. I'm already in as an owner. So some people say when they're creating a team, they want to try and add themselves as an owner. You won't see yourself because you're already looking at a team you own. So you'll be straight in there as an owner. You can change the status of people at any time. So an owner means that you can change anything in the team you like. But if you want them to have more restrictions, you can change them to just being a member. Down below here, if you uncollapse that there, you'll see here are the students or pupils that are members. And down here, I can do quick things like I can mute them. So if I wanted them not to be able to say anything or contribute to any comments, if I press that, I can mute them straight away, or I can unmute them. So it's a decision in your school when you're setting this up. Do you want to talk about expectations in ground rules and have them unmuted, or do you want to mute them initially, have that discussion and then unmute, or would you like to have them unmuted during lessons and then you mute them after lessons? It's really just a discussion point for you in your school. The next tab are channels. So at the moment, you'll see that I've only got the general channel, but I'll show you in a minute a class where I've got more than just the single general channel. Settings is quite an important one to get familiar with. So the team theme, you can badge them all up. So you can have photos, or you can upload photos. You can make it look pretty. You could change the name of your team if you've misnamed it as well. So that's an option there. You can also then go down here to member permission. So anyone that's in this class team, you can decide what they can and can't do. So if you tick something, it means they could, for instance, restore channels over here that have been deleted. So if you had maths, English and science, for instance, and then you decided you didn't want them, if you left that ticked, they can add them back. If you leave it unticked, they wouldn't even see that you've deleted them. They couldn't add them back. You also may or may not want them to be able to add apps in. I'll show you where the apps are in a moment. You also could limit them being able to add tabs in along the top, and I'll show you where the tabs are in just a moment. And you may or may not want them to be able to mess each other. So play around with those. You can set up a test team and see how they react, and then you can log in as a student member or pupil member and also a staff member and just get a feel for how they behave. Permissions will be locked here at the moment because we haven't got any guests in there. All the people that I added are from within my school, but let's say you are working in an academy and you've got several schools collaborating together. If you're going to involve a teacher from maybe another school, then the guest would be here and it would detect that you've invited somebody with an email address that doesn't belong to your school. At mentions are quite useful for drawing people's attention, so I normally leave them enabled. So if you put @Martin Long in a team, it would automatically tag me. It would stick it in my activity, so I'd get a red blob up there. It would remind me and let me know that I've got something I need to read, something I'm involved in, something sometimes people are asking me to contribute to. So it's a good way to get people's attention. Team code is earlier when I said you can either create a team or join a team by a code. You can generate the code, you can give that to students and they can join, or you can give it to individual members of staff rather than having to add them in. Fun stuff is exactly what it says on the tin. So if you don't want pupils to be able to use Giphies, or you're a bit nervous about them having stickers and memes and so forth, you can untick, and then they won't be available down the bottom. OneNote class notebook we'll come back to, but essentially it controls the preferences of your OneNote class notebook, but there isn't a great deal to choose in a class team. And tags are something you could look at a later date, but you can also add tags a bit like at mentions up there, and it might be tag English or tag maths, and it helps people find content within the teams. Excuse me. Analytics are really useful from a teaching point of view. It's a dashboard to show you all the activity in your team. You can change the time period, whether it's the last month or the last week. It shows you who's been logged in, how long they've been logged in for, what sort of resources they've been accessing, messages they've sent to each other. Here at the moment, because there's been no activity, it's unpopulated. But once people start using it, it's a really good place to get an overview. And also for leadership teams, it's a good way to monitor how much pupils and staff remotely are using Teams itself. Apps, these are the default apps that will be available to people, and you can take those out by pressing the recycle bin over here and it will uninstall them, or you can add others in by pressing more apps, because there's plenty more apps that you can add in by default. So there's a lot from Microsoft and there's also from other companies too, so you can narrow those down by searching over there. So if I go back to my team, I'm going to show you a team that's a little bit more developed. So I'm going to go into my primary demo class, and in here I've still stuck with just the one channel, but I've been setting some revision work, I've been setting some assignments, and we'll look at how we do those in a bit. But you'll notice along the top, and we haven't looked at those yet, posts. Again, this is where you've got team conversations. So if you say something that's within the general channel or any other channel within a team, that will be communal. Everybody who's a member of that team will be able to see what you've said, and you could delete it, or the owner can delete it, or the moderator can delete it. So you can also have comments from pupils to be moderated before you release them, so they don't instantly populate into the posts. But be aware that anyone who puts something in there, it is something that every single person in the school could potentially see. And also, again, that expectations discussion with pupils or students about what's appropriate. There are profanity filters on there, but you might want to add keywords. Again, you have to do that from the admin center. Files is a really useful section. So within my team, my primary team, I can have an area, essentially it's in the cloud. It's a bit like OneDrive or SharePoint, where I've got my resources, and then anybody that's in the team can dip into files. They can go in and help themselves. So if I was going to go into the maths folder within my files, in there I've got some work on number. It might be shape, space, and measure, but it's an area to upload resources and share resources. You can upload here by adding single files or folders. I know that that can be problematic, and uploading through Teams isn't always the best way. So I'm going to show you over here. You've got open in SharePoint. There's a button there. If you click that, it'll open up another tab, because Teams just sits on top of something called SharePoint. And then you'll see the same view as you see here in the Files tab. There's my folder called Class Material Maths and my individual Word document called Maths, except I'm viewing it over there. And if I want to upload now, I can press upload folder or files. I could also drag in from my window down here. So if I had my download documents and I wanted to grab something, I can just drag it and drop it over and release, and it will upload it there too. Word of warning: if you are uploading content from a shared drive on a network, or maybe you've got an external hard drive where your lifetime's planning exists, there is a 256 character limit in online storage platforms in the cloud. That means if your names and the individual letters exceed 256 characters, anything you try to upload beyond that is buried down below in folders within folders within folders, either won't upload or will be corrupted on upload, not the original, but the uploaded version. So you need to make your file structure shallow. I would urge you not to go more than 3 files deep, and keep the names of folders quite small, because the names of documents are often quite long. Up here you've got Class Notebook, because I'm in a primary team, and Class Notebook we're going to look at in Thursday's session about how to set assignments, how to use it for teaching and learning. You have the choice to either use assignments over here or OneNote Class Notebook, and we'll pick that up again there. You've also got assignments over here, so you'll be able to see that I've set a couple of assignments for my students. I had a science one and maths home learning. We'll look at how to set those in Thursday's session. And then once assignments are completed, you'll also have a gradebook that goes online, so you'll see all of the students or pupils that are enrolled. Here I've only got 3 for example purposes, but for each of the assignments you'll be able to go in, you'll be able to add content. You'll also be able to then open the student work directly from there. So if you're checking a chunk of distance learning, you can just jump straight into the work for the student there. You don't need to go back to files or go back into OneNote Class Notebook or assignments. It's done just a nice little shortcut to get straight to it, and that opens up straight in this web browser. If you're using any of the software and files, you can use here folder creation tool, but you can also open up all the documents. So if I wanted to create a quick progress tracking sheet, so I might say maths prog, I press create. That opens up within Teams. So for students or for staff members, it's less confusing because everything happens inside Teams itself. You get the web version. The web version doesn't have every function in the desktop version, so you can then choose to open it in the desktop software that you might have on your computer if you've got Office installed. But whatever you test in here, type in here as a test, will then be saved. It's saving automatically, so if you just press the close button, it will then take you back to your files, and you'll see there's my maths prog file. And if I opened it up again, in there will be the test that I created previously, and it's all saved. As far as today's overview of how Teams layout is concerned, we're almost there. One thing I'll just finish off by showing you is if you create a staff team, you can have private channels. So one of the exceptions where I say you might want to go ahead and set up channels, but this is more of a whole school organization rather than you as an individual. You can set up teams that are private. So if I had here one for finance and school business manager, it's got a padlock on it. When you create the channels in your team, which you can do here, if you've got a staff team, not a class team, and you go to add channel, one of the options down the bottom here is by default it's standard, and anyone who's a member of staff could see that channel. But if you want it to be private like the SBM, choose private, then go ahead and create it in the same way I showed you with the class channel. And after it's been created, only the people that were given permission will be able to open it. Everyone else will be blocked. I'm not going to show you any more in today's presentation, but what I will do is open this up to questions. So I've got Ellie on the call with me from Turn It On as well. So this is a chance to unmute your mics. I'm also going to have a look at any questions that might have been placed in the chat on the side. So if I've got anything over here, I'll do my best to send it through. So yes, we will share the PowerPoint. Okay, yes, we will. We can share the PowerPoint. That's no problem at all. And also you get the video. Anyone got any audio questions? Anyone want to unmute their mic and ask me anything?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Brian Lloyd from Forest Hill.
Hello, Brian.
I've downloaded Teams onto my iPhone, but it's asking for my email address, and I'm not too sure. I put in my Forest Hill school email address, but it doesn't recognise it. Is there a special email address that I use through 365? And if so, what is it? And where can I find it?
No, good question. So whether you're using Android or you're using Apple iOS, you download the app, it opens up. This is the same with any of the Microsoft Office 365 apps. And once you've opened it up, it will ask you to put an email account in, as you've just said. It should be your school email address. It shouldn't be anything different. So, for instance, my company email address, martin.long at the company email address, is exactly what I would put in. I would then put in the password associated with that school email address or company email address, and it will take you in, and you'll see slightly different arrangement, but everything that's in the online content will be there. So there is no reason, unless someone in the admin console at Forest Hill has disabled the sign-in from mobile apps. That
Right.
could be an explanation for it. So someone who is IT admin at Forest Hill, it might well be your Turn It On consultant, should go to the admin console and just check that sign-in from mobile apps is enabled. That could be where you're falling down.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions they wish to ask?
Hi Martin, it's Wendy from Bampton. We don't have students with email accounts in our school, so can Turn It On set up those for our children, please?
They can. So if you just log a support ticket for whoever, is it Kay that you have over there now, or is it still Tom McGauley?
Yeah, okay.
Kay. Okay, so if you log a support ticket for Kay, the consultants are more than au fait with how to create pupil users. If you do have remote access to your MIS system, it would help us greatly if we could get a list of pupil forenames and surnames, because then we can do bulk creation using CSV rather than plugging them all in one by one.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Would anybody else like to ask a question? I think you've got your mic muted, Anne. You might need to just press this mic button here and just unmute your mic. I think you're still muted. Just over here in this bar in the middle, if you click the middle of the screen, there you go, you got it.
I've done it now. Yeah, Anne Shiddick, Chair of Governors at Carrington Junior. My question is, I can hear as you go through this that there could be, once our school gets up and running with using this with its students, we're a primary school, junior school, that there could be various restrictions, and I'm wanting to use it for governor meetings, so I don't want there to be any restrictions on things. Should we set this up? I can't remember the precise groupings, but what kind of team should I set up? Should it be a professional team, an external team? How should it work?
Probably for governors, set up a PLC. It's a rather timely question. So next week we are running a governor-specific team session about setting up governor teams and enrolling governors in it, and then how to use the features in the PLCs. So that will happen one day next week. We're going to advertise the dates at some point before Friday.
Yes, I'm working with Tom Watson to try and work this out ahead of time and to use it for our meeting. But if it's going to come then, that's fine. I'll wait until then to see how that advice is put together.
Not a problem. I mean, if you wish to go ahead, PLC is the type of team to choose. You'll just need somebody to create accounts for all of your governors inside the school Office 365 tenancy so that they're all members as well.
We've got that already, so we're nearly there.
Perfect. Thank you, Anne. Are there any other questions? Silence. Okay, if you do have anything, I'll stay in this chat for a little while, so if you want to pop anything in here on the side, I'm more than happy to answer anything. I'll just check if anyone's popped anything in since I last opened it. So one from Phil Jones, who's a team manager at Turn It On. Once you've created your chat and added your users, how do you add additional users after that? So Phil, if you went back over, I'm just going to jump back into my team. It helps so I'd open the right tab. So if I'm into my, let's say, primary classroom team, up here where I've got the 3 dots, I click add members. And then when I add the members in there, they'll automatically be able to speak in the chat unless it's an option I've unticked so I can have more students in there. And checking back for if there are any other questions. A link to the webinar, we certainly will. Jay Blake and Ellie, who's on this call with me, again, that I'm currently making, and then we can send it out to you so you can watch this back if you've got anything you need to check. Are there any other questions that we need to ask? Hold on. So Lee, change the end of your mail address to .net instead of .org. Somebody's put. Is that meant to be for a particular member of the team? I'll let Lee respond in the chat. Audio questions for anyone on the call? Okay. Well, you're welcome to stay, or you are welcome to go if you've got other things that you need to get on with. I appreciate we're all quite busy, even though we're not actually physically in school, but I'll remain here just in case anyone wants to ask any other questions. Thank you all for joining, and we have another session tomorrow which is around Google Classroom. So if you're not a Google school, that's not going to be a great deal of use to you unless you're thinking about going into Google. But then on Thursday I'll have the second half of this session where we look specifically at the learning element of Microsoft Teams, how to set distance learning, assignments, and OneNote class notebooks. So if you wish to join us back for that, there's a link to Thursday's meeting, so you can join up for Thursday's meeting, and I'll see you all back here again, and that's going to be a 1 o'clock meeting again, I believe.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, Martin.
Hello.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Joe.
Yeah. Someone just asked a question relating to governors meetings. Now, I'm a Senko.
Yes.
And I was wondering, would it be possible for me to go ahead with my review meeting? So therefore, I would like to create a team of myself, a couple of parents, someone from the local authority. Would that be possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I set this up for one of my technical support schools last week.
Okay.
So you just create a staff or a PLC team, whichever you prefer. And then the one thing to make sure is that you've got remote access to external users enabled from the admin center. So there's an option in what's called the Teams admin center. And sometimes by default, it's switched to off for invite external users, which means you can only invite people with an email address that belongs to your school. But you'll need somebody who does your IT support to enable that, so that you can then invite people. So we had exactly that scenario where the Senko was trying to invite some local healthcare professionals and they couldn't, and that was the reason why. So just get that sorted, and then you can invite it, and then that meeting's entirely private to the people you invite.
Okay, so that means that I've got to ring Lee. Is our support? Do I ring her? Do I email her?
Yes. Is that Lee Carter?
Yes.
Lee, I think he's on this call. Lee, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, she is. I can see her.
Hi, Joan. Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
Yeah, if you can just pop me an email, lee.carter@turniton, and then I can have a look for you. I know Emma also has full access to the Office 365 tenancy, so one of us should be able to help you and get that sorted.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much.
Not a problem at all.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Any other questions?
Got my question answered.
Oh. Any internal questions that anybody wants to ask in Turn It On? No. Okay. Well, if there are no more, I'm available on Teams if you want to contact me individually, but otherwise I'm going to stop the recording, and also I'll end the question. So I'm going to stop recording now, and